The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the mahogany conference table as Daniel Morrison signed the last document of what had been a grueling day at his Seattle law firm. At 34, he had built a reputation as one of the city's most dedicated corporate attorneys, though that dedication had come at a price he was only beginning to understand. "Another late night?" Sarah, his paralegal, asked as she gathered the signed papers. "Actually, no," Daniel replied, a rare smile crossing his face. "Wedding planning tonight. Emma wants to finalize the honeymoon details." Sarah's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a change Daniel might have noticed if he hadn't been checking his phone, where 3 missed calls from Emma awaited him. The drive home through Seattle's perpetual drizzle gave Daniel time to mentally prepare for the evening ahead. In 2 months, he would marry Emma Chen, the marketing executive he'd met at a charity gala 3 years ago. She was everything a successful lawyer should want. Ambitious, beautiful, and from a prominent family that owned a chain of high-end hotels along the West Coast. Their Queen Anne home stood pristine against the gray sky, its modern architecture a testament to Emma's impeccable taste. Daniel found her in the living room, surrounded by travel brochures and her laptop, her silk blouse still crisp despite the long day. "You're late," she said without looking up. "Sorry, the Morrison acquisition. It's always something, isn't it?" Emma's voice carried that particular edge he'd been hearing more often lately. "Sit down. We need to talk about Paris." Daniel loosened his tie and settled beside her, trying to ignore the knot forming in his stomach. "I thought we agreed on Paris. You've always wanted to go." "We did agree on Paris." Emma finally met his eyes, and something in her gaze made Daniel's chest tighten. "But there's been a change of plans." She pulled out a folder. Everything in Emma's life lived in folders, organized and categorized. "My cousin Jessica called today. She and Marcus can join us for the honeymoon. They've never been to Europe, and I thought it would be perfect." Daniel blinked, certain he'd misheard. "Your cousin wants to come on our honeymoon?" "Don't make it sound so ridiculous," Emma snapped. "It's not like we'd be sharing a room. Paris is a big city. We could do some things together, some apart. Jessica's been having a hard time since her promotion fell through, and I want to be there for her. Emma, it's our honeymoon. It's supposed to be about us, starting our life together. God. Daniel, why do you have to make everything so difficult?" She stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "This is important to me. Jessica is like a sister to me. You'd understand if you had any real family connections." The words hit their mark. Daniel's mother had passed when he was 12, his father 3 years ago. His only real family now was his 8-year-old son, Lucas, from his first marriage, a fact Emma barely tolerated. "That's not fair," Daniel said quietly. "Isn't it?" Emma whirled around. "When was the last time you prioritized anything besides work? Or Lucas? Do you know how embarrassing it is when my friends ask about our wedding plans, and I have to admit my fiancé is too busy with his ex-wife's child to help? He's my son." "Emma, not my ex-wife's child. My son. From a failed marriage to a woman who couldn't even stick around to raise him properly." Daniel stood, anger finally breaking through his careful composure. "Melissa died, Emma. She didn't abandon anyone. She died of cancer." For a moment, silence filled the room. Broken only by the rain against the windows. Emma's face softened slightly, but her resolve remained firm. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that." She returned to the couch, her posture rigid. "But my point stands. This wedding, this honeymoon, it's all been about what works for your schedule. What doesn't conflict with Lucas's soccer games or school plays. Just once, I want something that's mine. Having your cousin on our honeymoon is what you want? Having support is what I want," Emma said. "Jessica understands me. She understands the pressure of being successful, of maintaining appearances. Sometimes I feel like you don't even see who I am anymore." Daniel ran his hands through his hair, exhaustion settling over him like a familiar blanket. "What are you saying, Emma?" "I'm saying," she paused, seeming to gather herself. "I'm saying that if you can't support me in this, if you can't understand why having Jessica there would make me happy, then maybe you don't want me on our honeymoon at all. That's not—" "No. Let me finish." Emma stood again, this time moving toward the stairs. "I've already talked to Jessica. She's excited about Paris. If you have a problem with it, then perhaps you should find someone else to take. God knows you'd probably prefer Lucas anyway." The accusation hung in the air between them, sharp and cutting. Daniel opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. What was there to say? In 3 years together, Emma had made her feelings about Lucas clear. He was tolerated, a necessary inconvenience that came with the package of marrying Daniel. "I need some air," Daniel finally managed. "Of course you do," Emma called after him as he headed for the door. "Running away, just like always." Outside, The Seattle rain had intensified, soaking through Daniel's suit jacket within minutes. He walked aimlessly through the Queen Anne neighborhood, past houses that glowed warmly in the gathering darkness. Families visible through windows. Normal families, having normal dinners, living normal lives. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "I'll be at Jessica's tonight. We can talk tomorrow when you're ready to be reasonable." Daniel stared at the message, then at his reflection in a puddle at his feet. When had his life become this? When had the woman he'd fallen in love with become someone who weaponized his love for his son? Who turned their honeymoon into a group vacation? Another buzz. This time, a photo from his ex-mother-in-law, Patricia, who had Lucas for the evening. The boy grinned at the camera, gap-toothed and covered in spaghetti sauce, holding up a drawing. Daniel zoomed in. It was a picture of the Eiffel Tower, with two stick figures standing beneath it. "Me and Dad in Paris" was written in Lucas's shaky handwriting. Daniel's throat tightened. He'd been teaching Lucas basic French, sharing stories about Paris, promising that someday they'd go together. The boy had been fascinated, checking out library books about France, practicing bonjour and merci with anyone who would listen. Standing there in the rain, staring at his son's innocent drawing, Daniel made a decision that would change everything. If Emma didn't want him on their honeymoon, if she preferred her cousin's company to his, then perhaps it was time to stop pretending this wedding was a good idea. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts, finding his travel agent's number. It was after hours, but Margaret owed him a favor after he'd helped with her nephew's legal troubles. "Margaret, it's Daniel Morrison. I need to make some changes to a Paris booking. Actually, cancel that. I need to make a completely new one." As he spoke, outlining his new plans, Daniel felt something shift inside him. For the first time in months, maybe years, he wasn't trying to balance everyone else's expectations. He was choosing what mattered most. The rain had stopped by the time he ended the call. Daniel looked up at the house he shared with Emma, its windows now dark. Tomorrow there would be confrontations, anger, probably the end of an engagement. But tonight, he had a different call to make. "Patricia, it's Daniel. Is Lucas still awake? I have something amazing to tell him." In the background, he could hear his son's excited voice asking if it was Dad. Daniel smiled, genuinely smiled, for the second time that day. "Hey, buddy," he said when Lucas got on the phone. "How would you like to go to Paris with me?" "Just you and me, like in your drawing." The squeal of joy that erupted from the phone was loud enough to be heard by a passing couple, who smiled at Daniel's obvious delight. As Lucas launched into a stream of questions, would they see the Eiffel Tower? Could they eat real croissants? Was it true French people wore berets? Daniel felt the weight of his decision settling over him. He wasn't just choosing a different honeymoon companion. He was choosing a different life, one where love meant supporting each other, not competing for control, one where family came first, where a little boy's dreams mattered more than maintaining appearances. "Dad?" Lucas's voice broke through his thoughts. "Is Emma coming too?" Daniel paused, then answered honestly. "No, buddy, this trip is just for us. Is that okay?" "That's the best news ever," Lucas exclaimed, and Daniel could hear Patricia chuckling in the background. "We can eat snails and climb the tower and see real art and—" As his son continued listing adventures, Daniel walked slowly back toward the house. There would be consequences tomorrow, difficult conversations and broken promises. But listening to Lucas's joy, he knew he'd already made the right choice. Tentar novamente gokadadar. Chapter 2. The Reckoning. The morning after came with a fury Daniel had anticipated but still wasn't fully prepared for. He'd spent the night at a downtown hotel, knowing Emma would need space to process his decision. By 7 a.m., his phone had 23 missed calls, 41 text messages, and enough voicemails to fill his inbox. He listened to exactly one. "Daniel Morrison, you coward. You don't make unilateral decisions about our wedding and disappear. Get back here now!" Instead of returning to Queen Anne, Daniel drove to his office. It was Saturday, but the building was never truly empty. Ambitious associates and overworked partners populated the floors of Brennan, Morrison & Associates like ghosts of careers sacrificed. "You look like hell," observed James Brennan, senior partner and Daniel's mentor, from the doorway of Daniel's office. "Let me guess, wedding planning going poorly?" Daniel looked up from his computer where he'd been reviewing the honeymoon cancellation confirmations. "You could say that. The wedding's off, James." The older man entered uninvited, settling into one of the leather chairs across from Daniel's desk. At 62, James had been through 3 marriages and considered himself an expert on relationship failures. "Want to talk about it? Emma wanted to bring her cousin on our honeymoon. When I objected, she told me I shouldn't come at all." Daniel leaned back, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. "So I'm taking her advice. I'm taking Lucas to Paris instead." James whistled low. "Bold move. Emma Chen isn't someone who takes rejection well. Her father..." Already called me, Daniel interrupted. 6:30 this morning. Threatened to pull his company's business from the firm if I didn't come to my senses. And I told him his daughter's happiness wasn't a business transaction that could be negotiated in billable hours. James laughed, a genuine bark of surprise. Good for you, Daniel. About time you grew a spine when it came to that family. Though this could get messy. It already is. Daniel turned his laptop around, showing an Instagram post Emma had made at 2 a.m. A photo of her engagement ring with the caption, "When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Single and stronger for it. New beginnings. Know your worth." She's controlling the narrative, James observed, making herself the victim. Classic Chen move. Daniel's phone buzzed. Patricia, his former mother-in-law. Lucas is asking when you're picking him up. Also, Emma called here looking for you. I may have told her you were in Tacoma. Oops. Despite everything, Daniel smiled. Patricia had been more of a mother to him than his own had lived to be, and her loyalty to him after Melissa's death had never wavered. I need to see my son, Daniel said, closing his laptop, and figure out how to explain why his life is about to change dramatically. Daniel. James's voice carried unusual seriousness. Are you sure about this? Not about Emma? That woman would have made you miserable. But taking Lucas to Paris, right now, when everything's imploding? When my wife died, Daniel said slowly. I promised her I'd make sure Lucas knew he was loved, that he was the priority. Emma never understood that. She saw him as competition, something to be managed. So yes, I'm sure. He deserves a father who chooses him. The drive to Patricia's Ballard home took him past the farmer's market where he and Emma had spent Sunday mornings, pretending to be the perfect couple. His phone rang constantly. Emma, her father, her friends, mutual acquaintances suddenly taking sides. He ignored them all. Patricia's Craftsman house felt like stepping into safety. She met him at the door with coffee and understanding eyes. Lucas is in the backyard, practicing his French with the dog. Fair warning, he's taught Baxter to sit in French but not English. How's he doing? Daniel asked, accepting the coffee gratefully. Better than you, from the looks of it. Patricia studied him with the direct gaze that had made her such a formidable pediatric surgeon before retirement. He knows something's different. Kids always do. Through the kitchen window, Daniel could see Lucas throwing a ball for Baxter, narrating their play in a mix of English and badly pronounced French. His heart clenched at the innocence of it, the way children could find joy even as adult worlds crumbled around them. Emma's been calling here, Patricia continued. I told her you weren't here, but she didn't believe me. Kept insisting I was choosing sides. I'm sorry you're getting dragged into this. Oh, honey. Patricia touched his arm gently. I've been on your side since the day Melissa brought you home. Emma was never right for you. Too concerned with appearances, too threatened by Lucas. Melissa would have hated her. The mention of his late wife stung, but in a clean way, like antiseptic on a wound. I keep wondering what she'd say about all this. She'd say about damn time, Patricia replied, without hesitation. And then she'd start planning your Paris itinerary. Speaking of which, when do you leave? Thursday. I managed to get seats on a direct flight, and the hotel had a cancellation for a suite. Lucas doesn't know yet. I wanted to tell him today. Make sure he understands. That Emma won't be in your lives anymore? Patricia finished gently. He'll be relieved, Daniel. He's been trying so hard to make her like him. No child should have to work that hard for acceptance. Before Daniel could respond, Lucas burst through the back door, Baxter at his heels. Dad, you're here! Grandma said you had a surprise! Daniel knelt to his son's level, taking in the grass stains on his jeans, the excitement in his brown eyes, Melissa's eyes. Hey, buddy. Yeah, I have some news. Want to sit down? They settled on the porch swing. Lucas tucked against Daniel's side. Baxter sprawled at their feet. Patricia made herself scarce, understanding this needed to be a father-son moment. Lucas, you know how Emma and I were planning to get married? The boy nodded, his expression already guarded. Even at 8, he'd learned to be careful when Emma's name came up. Well, we've decided not to get married after all. Emma and I want different things, and it's better to figure that out now than later. Lucas was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, is it because of me? What? No, buddy, absolutely not. Daniel pulled his son closer. It's because Emma and I weren't right for each other. Sometimes adults think they want the same things, but then realize they don't. It has nothing to do with you. She didn't like me much, Lucas said matter-of-factly. She pretended to, but I could tell. Like when she'd smile, but her eyes weren't happy. Daniel's throat tightened. I'm sorry you felt that way. You deserved better. It's okay. Lucas looked up at him. Does this mean it can be just us again? Yeah, buddy. Just us. Daniel took a breath. And speaking of just us, remember that trip to Paris? Lucas straightened. hope blooming across his face. The honeymoon? Not a honeymoon anymore. Just a father-son adventure. You and me, leaving Thursday for a week in Paris. What do you think? The shriek of joy that erupted from Lucas brought Baxter to his feet, barking in sympathy. Lucas launched himself at Daniel, arms wrapped tight around his neck. Really? Really, truly? Just us? Really, truly, Daniel confirmed, holding his son close. We'll see everything. The Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, Notre Dame, eat crepes by the Seine. Can we go to the top of the Eiffel Tower and eat snails and see the Mona Lisa? And everything, Daniel promised. Whatever you want. As Lucas dissolved into excited planning, Patricia reappeared with sandwiches and a knowing smile. They spent the afternoon making lists, Lucas practicing his French phrases with renewed enthusiasm, Daniel feeling lighter with each passing hour. But reality has a way of intruding on perfect moments. Daniel's phone, silent for the past hour, suddenly erupted with notifications. Emma had escalated from Instagram to Facebook, posting a lengthy statement about betrayal, broken promises, and choosing children from past relationships over building a future. Is that about us? Lucas asked, peering at the phone screen. Daniel quickly locked the phone. Just adult stuff. Nothing important. But Lucas wasn't fooled. She's mad you're taking me instead of her. Yeah, Daniel admitted. She is. I'm glad, Lucas said firmly. I didn't want to pretend to be happy she was there. Now I can just be actually happy. Patricia caught Daniel's eye over Lucas's head, her expression saying what they both knew. Children saw more than adults gave them credit for. As evening approached, Daniel knew he had to face the situation head-on. He couldn't hide at Patricia's forever, and there were practical matters to address. The house, shared assets, the wedding vendors who needed to be canceled. I should go, he said reluctantly. There's a lot to figure out. You're staying here tonight, Patricia announced in her no-nonsense surgeon voice. Lucas's room has bunk beds. You can pretend you're having a sleepover. Patricia, I couldn't. You could and you will. Tomorrow's soon enough to deal with Emma and her family. Tonight, you're going to help Lucas pack for Paris, and remember why you made the right choice. As if to emphasize her point, Lucas appeared with an armload of library books about France. Dad, did you know there are catacombs under Paris with 6 million skeletons? Can we see those too? Daniel laughed. Really laughed for the first time in days. We'll see, buddy. We'll see. Later that night, after Lucas had finally exhausted himself with trip planning and fallen asleep amid scattered guidebooks, Daniel sat on Patricia's porch, finally checking his messages. The professional fallout was beginning. 3 clients had already called to express concern about the firm's stability. Emma's father had made good on his threat, sending a formal letter withdrawing his company's business. But there were other messages, too. Sarah, his paralegal, heard what happened. Good for you. Lucas is lucky to have you. A text from his brother in Portland. Mom would be proud. When you get back from Paris, bring Lucas down. Time he knew his cousins better. And surprisingly, a voicemail from one of Emma's bridesmaids. Daniel, it's Kara. I know I'm supposed to be on Emma's side, but she's wrong. What she posted was cruel. Have a wonderful time in Paris with your son. Daniel smiled, looking up at the Seattle sky, unusually clear for October. Tomorrow would bring more drama, more fallout, more difficult conversations. But tonight, his son was sleeping peacefully, dreaming of Parisian adventures. The wedding he'd been dreading was off. The life he'd been living to meet others' expectations was ending. And for the first time in 3 years, Daniel Morrison felt like himself again. Inside, Lucas stirred, calling out in his sleep, Bonjour, Papa! Daniel went to check on him, finding his son cuddling the stuffed Eiffel Tower Patricia had bought him months ago. He adjusted Lucas's blanket, whispering, Bonjour, mon fils. Thursday couldn't come soon enough. Tentar novamente gok editar, Chapter 3. The journey Thursday arrived with the kind of crisp Seattle morning that made the city look like a postcard. Daniel stood in Patricia's guest room, zipping the last suitcase while Lucas bounced on the bed, too excited to contain himself. Dad, did you remember the phrase book? And the camera? And the euros? And everything's packed, buddy, Daniel assured him, though he mentally ran through his own checklist. Passports, documents, medications for Lucas's mild asthma, enough activities to handle an 8-hour flight. The past 4 days had been a whirlwind of damage control and new beginnings. Emma had moved her belongings out of the house while Daniel was at work, leaving behind only the engagement ring and a letter from her lawyer. The wedding vendors had been understanding. Most had dealt with called-off weddings before. The professional fallout was manageable. James had personally called their major clients, smoothing ruffled feathers with his legendary charm. Airport shuttles here! Patricia called from downstairs. Lucas grabbed his backpack, carefully packed with books, his Nintendo Switch, and snacks Patricia had insisted on, and raced for the door. Daniel followed more slowly, taking a last look around the room that had become his refuge. At the door, Patricia pulled him into a fierce hug. "You're doing the right thing," she whispered. "Melissa would be so proud." "Thanks for everything," Daniel managed, his voice thick. "Oh, stop that. Your family. Now go show my grandson Paris." The ride to SeaTac was filled with Lucas's chatter about everything he'd learned about France. The driver, amused by the boy's enthusiasm, taught him how to properly pronounce croissant, leading to a 15-minute pronunciation lesson that had even Daniel laughing. At the airport, the reality of what they were doing seemed to hit Lucas. He grew quieter as they checked in, his hand finding Daniel's as they navigated security. "You okay, buddy?" Lucas nodded, then shook his head. "What if I forget all my French? What if they laugh at me?" Daniel knelt beside him, oblivious to the impatient travelers streaming around them. "Hey, look at me. The French people are going to love you. You know why? Because you're trying. You're making an effort to speak their language, to understand their culture. That matters more than perfect pronunciation." "Emma said Americans were embarrassing in other countries," Lucas said quietly. Daniel's jaw tightened. Even absent, Emma's casual cruelties lingered. "Emma was wrong about a lot of things, including that. Come on, let's get to our gate. I have a surprise for you." The surprise was an upgrade to business class, using miles Daniel had accumulated from years of work travel but never spent. Lucas's eyes widened as they were escorted to the lounge. "Is this really for us?" "All for us," Daniel confirmed, watching his son explore the space with wonder. "Nothing but the best for my travel companion." They spent the wait sampling snacks, and Lucas practicing his French on increasingly charmed lounge staff. One flight attendant, hearing about their trip, brought Lucas a set of pilot wings and a postcard of Paris. "Your son is delightful," she told Daniel. "Is this his first international trip?" "First time out of the country," Daniel confirmed. "We're both a little nervous." "Don't be. Paris is magical for children, and for parents watching their children discover it." As they boarded, Lucas clutching Daniel's hand tightly, another passenger stopped them. "Excuse me, I couldn't help overhearing. I'm Marie-Claire, from Lyon. If you need any recommendations for child-friendly places in Paris, I'd be happy to help." For the next 20 minutes, as the plane prepared for departure, Marie-Claire regaled them with insider tips: the best crepe stand near the Eiffel Tower, a lesser-known entrance to the Louvre to avoid lines, a carousel in Montmartre that locals loved. "Your French is very good for a young American," she told Lucas, who beamed. "Keep practicing. Parisians appreciate the effort." As the plane lifted off, Lucas pressed against the window, watching Seattle disappear beneath clouds. Daniel found himself doing the same, watching the city that held so much history, good and painful, shrink away. "Dad?" Lucas's voice was small. "Are you sad? About Emma and the wedding and everything?" Daniel considered lying, giving the easy answer. But Lucas deserved honesty. "A little sad, yeah. When you plan a life with someone and it doesn't work out, it's disappointing. But I'm not sad about this trip. I'm not sad about choosing you." Lucas was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm glad you chose me. Always, buddy. Always." The flight passed in a blur of movies, meals Lucas found fascinatingly fancy, and Daniel teaching his son card games Patricia had taught him years ago. Lucas fell asleep somewhere over Greenland, his head on Daniel's shoulder, the French phrase book still clutched in his hands. Daniel stayed awake, looking out at the endless Atlantic below, thinking about choices and chances. His phone, in airplane mode, held dozens of unread messages he'd deal with later. For now, there was just this: his son sleeping peacefully beside him, Paris waiting ahead, and the freedom of having chosen love over expectation. "Sir?" A flight attendant appeared with a smile. "We'll be beginning our descent soon. Should I wake your son?" Daniel looked at Lucas, drooling slightly on his shoulder, completely at peace. "Give us a few more minutes." But Lucas stirred on his own as the plane began its descent, immediately alert. "Are we there? Is that France?" Below them, the countryside of northern France spread out in neat patchwork fields. Lucas pressed against the window, trying to see everything at once. "There it is!" he exclaimed as Paris came into view, the Eiffel Tower unmistakable even from the air. "Dad, look! It's really real!" Daniel laughed at the redundancy, but he understood. Seeing it in person, even from above, made everything concrete. They were really here, really doing this. Charles de Gaulle Airport was a whirlwind of new sights and sounds. Lucas bravely attempted French with the passport control officer, who responded with such rapid-fire French that the boy looked momentarily stunned before the officer smiled and switched to English. "Welcome to France, young man. Enjoy Paris." Their driver to the hotel spoke enough English to maintain a running commentary about the sights they passed. Lucas tried to see everything at once, bouncing from one side of the car to the other. Dad, look! That sign is in French! And that one! And, oh my gosh, is that Notre Dame? We'll see it up close tomorrow, Daniel promised, his own excitement building. When was the last time he'd felt this sense of adventure, of possibility? The hotel, a boutique property in the Marais that Marie Claire had enthusiastically endorsed, welcomed them with the kind of understated elegance Paris did so well. The manager, hearing it was Lucas's first visit, upgraded them to a suite with a view of the rooftops. Lucas stood at the window, transfixed. It looks like a movie, he breathed. Better than a movie, Daniel said, joining him. It's real, and it's ours for the next week. They were both exhausted, but too excited to sleep. After showers and changes of clothes, they ventured out into the early evening streets. The Marais was alive with locals heading home from work, tourists exploring, cafes beginning their dinner service. Can we just walk? Lucas asked. I want to see everything. So they walked, no destination in mind, Lucas pointing out every detail. The different architecture, the way people dressed, the dogs, so many dogs, the language surrounding them like music. They stopped at a small cafe where the waiter patiently let Lucas order in French, deux crêpes au chocolat, s'il vous plaît, and praised his pronunciation. The crepes arrived with a flourish that made Lucas giggle, and they ate them on a bench by the Seine, watching the boats pass. Dad? Lucas said, chocolate on his chin. This is the best day ever. Yeah? Daniel pulled out his phone to capture the moment. Lucas grinning, Paris glowing in the background. Even better than Christmas? Way better, because it's just us. And because you picked me instead of a real honeymoon. This is a real honeymoon, Daniel corrected gently. It's celebrating a new beginning. Ours. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed impossibly cinematic, they made their way back to the hotel. Lucas was flagging, jet lag finally catching up, but he insisted on stopping to pet every French dog they encountered, delighting their owners with his attempts at French. Back in their suite, Lucas was asleep almost before his head hit the pillow, still murmuring merci and bonjour in his dreams. Daniel stood at the window, looking out at the city of light beginning to twinkle. His phone showed missed calls from Emma, from her lawyer, from colleagues curious about the drama. Tomorrow he might deal with them, or the day after, or maybe not at all. For now, there was just this. His son safe and happy in the next room, a city of wonders waiting to be explored, and the profound peace of knowing he'd made the right choice. Thank you, Melissa, he whispered to the Paris night, for Lucas, for showing me what real love looks like, for helping me be brave enough to choose it. Somewhere in the distance, church bells chimed the hour.